I brought you to the Walden Pond Reservation, not far from Concord, Massachusetts, because in many ways this is where the whole concept of a getaway cabin in the woods, a retreat with nature, originates. There was a man named Henry David Thoreau who lived in the 19th century, writer, philosopher, famous today around the world for some of the ideas that he really believed in very strongly. In 1845, he came here to the edge of this pond and he built a tiny little cabin, an escape. He wasn't a hermit, but he was really interested in the experience of living with nature, to see how nature would affect him and how he affected nature. He really bemoaned the fact that even in those days, many of the forests of America were being timbered for the railroads and for lumber industry. He built a cabin not far from here. Let's look at the little remnants of the cabin. Thoreau came from a cultured background. His family were manufacturers in New England, and he was educated at the Concord Academy and at Harvard College. But when he came out here to Walden Pond, he chose to live very simply. This is actually the site of the cabin, maybe 10 by 14. And these are actually the foundation stones for his hearth and his chimney. It was during his Harvard days that Thoreau became acquainted with Ralph Waldo Emerson, preeminent 19th century philosopher, transcendentalist, friend of people like Bronson Alcott, the father of Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women. And it was Emerson who owned this land and who made it possible for Thoreau to have his experiment here. The little shed, the little hut, was actually sold to a farmer and moved away. Eventually it did duty as a pig shed. But Bronson Alcott wanted to commemorate the site of the experiment, and he created a cairn with a bunch of stones to mark the site. Over the decades, fans of Thoreau's have brought thousands more stones. In fact, you can turn one over and occasionally find an old date. Someone named Temple in 1878. And I brought a rock for all of us. In the late 19th century, numerous projects were undertaken to make Walden Pond attractive to the public. The Fitchburg Railroad, which had laid tracks past Walden back in 1866, built an excursion park on the shore of Ice Fort Cove. The facilities, concessions, swings, bathhouses, boats, and halls for dining, dancing, and public speaking served church gatherings and fundraisers, July 4th festivals, and commercial associations. It was a popular attraction until it burnt down in 1902. When in 1922, the Emerson, Forbes, and Haywood families granted some 80 acres of land surrounding the pond to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they restricted activity on the premises for the purposes of preserving the Walden of Emerson and Thoreau. Thoreau's account of his 2 years living here on Walden Pond was published as his masterpiece, Walden. He's considered the father of conservation, and Walden Pond is really the birthplace of the modern environmentalist movement. For the last 8 years, a man from Pennsylvania named David Bartow, a school teacher, has recreated the personality of Henry David Thoreau here in the summertime. Let's visit him and also take a look at a recreation of the cabin in the woods. Hello, Mr. Thoreau.
Good day, sir. I am Henry Thoreau.
Good day. How are you? I am Bob Vila, although I'm sure you've never heard of me. Folks down in Concord said that I might find you here near the pond.
I'm glad to make your acquaintance, sir.
Would you mind if I asked you a few questions?
I am amenable, sir.
What has prompted you to come live alone here on the edge of Walden Pond?
Well, in particular, I came to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover I had not lived.
How fascinating.
In particular, my brother John died in my arms quite violently of lockjaw in 1842, and as I never recovered from that loss, I was wanting my own life to not go awry. I was wanting to know what I was living for myself.
Have you found some peace and happiness here on the edge of the pond?
Well, by my intimacy with nature, I found myself withdrawn from man. My interest in the sun and the moon, in the morning and the evening, has compelled me to solitude, and I have never found the companion so companionable as solitude.
Indeed. Mr. Thoreau, I myself am a builder in my time and place.
Oh.
And my friends and I were curious about your own little cabin in the woods. Tell me, did you build it by yourself?
Well, I pride myself on having done most of the work. However, at the insistence of my friend, Mr. Emerson, I was forced to invite several of the populace of Concord to raise the frame, which I did dutifully, for I was squatting on his property.
Oh, you were a squatter then?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
In many ways.
And the materials, did you obtain them locally?
Well, some of them I got near your very feet, for I had to get the boulders and sand and whatnot from Walden Pond. And other materials I got from town or from the Irish shanties. One fellow in particular was willing to sell me his shanty as he was off with his family.
So you've used some
Yes.
material that was previously used.
The old shingles, the board.
How much
whatnot.
money have you spent?
Well, the total cost of my house was $28, 12 and a half cents in final accounting, which was about the annual rent for an apartment in Concord.
Indeed. Now, I've heard it told that you were recently arrested.
Well, who invited you, sir? Yes, there was a poll tax that I had refused to pay, and in July of 1846, on my way into Concord to pick up a pair of boots that had been mended, and I was to use next day to take the children on a huckleberry party, I was accosted by Mr. Sam Staples, who reminded me I had not paid my poll tax of $1.50 for the last 6 years.
Why did you refuse to pay that?
Well, you see, sir, that tax went to support a militia and Massachusetts regulars who were on the only business of rounding up the runaway slaves from the South, and then in returning them to their plantation owners there, too. I would not put up with that lapse of freedom.
A noble thought. May we see the inside of your dwelling, sir?
Well, all is well. You are welcome, sir.
Well, this is really cozy.
Yes, it is, sir.
I very much like the structure of the place.
You're most kind.
These are pine logs,
Oh, yes. White pine, then, too, sir.
and you've left the bark on them.
I cut them myself in the nearby woods. Yes, I found that it kept the wood stronger.
And I see that you've put in a girt that you've hewn very nicely.
Yes, I took some time with that, sir.
Did you take a great deal of time in building the cabin?
Oh, yes, I lingered quite a while. I enjoyed it so. I found that I arrived at the end of March of 1845 and did not get my frame up until early May. I finally moved in on July 4th and did not even do my plastering until that November and then December for my chimney, too.
So you took your sweet time, but you did a very nice job. What about the furnishings in here?
Well, some of them I got secondhand from attic space. For instance, I refurbished this bed. I caned it myself, you see.
Yes, I see. Very nice work.
I took some pains for a slant-top desk here and brought in a table as well. Thank God
You keep it locked, I see.
yes, I have some private manuscripts in there. Thank God I could sit and stand in here without the aid of a furniture warehouse.
Indeed. You don't need much.
My house was small and I could hardly entertain an echo in it, I must be honest.
And you've been here how long?
Well, I lived here for 2 years, 2 months and 2 days, and at the end of my sojourn, I became a sojourner in civilized life again.